Good morning. Welcome to episode 3 of the Unbreakable podcast. My name is Alex Johnson and you are joining me on my journey of self-improvement. And let's just jump right into it. So, what I'm going to talk about today is pretty much based on a conversation I had yesterday with my previous personal training business partner, who also happens to be my cousin. Great guy. So we were long overdue a catch up yesterday, and we ended up being on the phone for about an hour and a half, just chatting, normal catch up type stuff. But we obviously talked about the stuff that's going on with me at the moment and some stuff that's going on with him at the moment. And the kind of key focus point I'm going to hone in on in this podcast is fear. I think is going to be the key word of the day. Fear. So when I was talking to him, we can both be a little bit emotional, and there was a couple of points where we were getting down to some hard truths and going a bit deeper with everything that's going on, and it brought up some emotions. And the fear, there's two types of fear I'm going to talk about. The first one is obviously like massively related to what's going on with me at the moment, and that is the fact that obviously I have the problem at the moment, let's say, of not being able to be a equal provider in my family household. So the initial fear that I was talking to him about was very simply that I feel like a failure because I'm not able to do that contribution to support the family, that I am on this sort of deadline crunch where I need to have a solution in place so that financially we are not impacted. And I do think it's quite hard for people, and obviously my experience is from a man's perspective. So when I say people, my experience means men. It's hard for men to admit that they feel that way, feel like a failure, like they've let down the person they love the most, they've let down their child, they've let down family, friends, and are in this state of uncontrollable existence, let's say. So, I have no control over what's happening in the current situation, but I have control of how I get out of it. So it's the feeling of being a failure that paralyzes people, just keeps them in that state. So I think on the first podcast I did a couple of days ago, I mentioned that I haven't had like a mental breakdown. I haven't spiraled downwards yet. Again, don't know if I will. We'll see when it gets closer and closer to the deadline. However, there are people who will have spiraled in this sort of circumstance, and then that crushing sense of being a failure pushing down on them, basically embedding the kind of the you're not good enough thoughts, the you don't deserve good things thoughts, all the negativity and all those bad thought processes that come with that sort of stuff. And that puts you, that can paralyze people into almost just accepting it as that's their life now. And it can be very, very hard to find additional motivation or a pathway out of that situation. Now, currently, I would say I'm lucky enough that my experience, my education on different topics is extremely transferable, to the point where I've already kind of secured something, which is good. But that fear, that's what I want to focus on. Like, how do you get over that fear? If you are someone who has spiraled down, you've got all these negative thoughts on, and you're paralyzed, and even if you have an extremely supportive partner, almost nothing they say can get you out of it. And that's a position I think a lot of people sometimes find themselves in if something like this is happening to them. And like, everything I say is probably things that you've heard before, but there's so much truth in it. Like, for example, you do have to take one day at a time. You do have to focus on little things to try and create those sort of small accomplishments. For example, spending an hour, 2 hours a day looking for new opportunities. But you need to, my biggest thing is you need to have something just to focus on that could be completely unrelated, that just allows you to create something, do something. So my example currently are these podcasts. So I go for about a 25-minute walk. I end up in the location I'm at now. I get my phone out and I just start talking. And I only think about what I'm going to talk about maybe 5 minutes before I get here. Nothing is scripted at all, and I just ad-lib the whole thing and just talk. But it's the thought process. It's the kind of the thought dumping, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at, because I'm having a conversation that me personally, for whatever reason, would find very difficult to talk to someone else about. I have not spoken to my partner about the fear, and how almost crippling it can be sometimes. So I spoke to my cousin the other day, and I said to him, like, I can be in a very happy place, I can be holding my daughter, I can be playing, I can be happy, smiling, and then out of nowhere, just this thought of failure comes into my head, and it just smashes me in the stomach, and like, anxiety builds up. I've got no reason to be thinking about any of this stuff. I'm in a happy moment, I'm enjoying the moment, I'm trying to enjoy the moment, but bam, feels like someone's just come up out of nowhere and just smashed me in the stomach. And that's how it feels sometimes. It just comes out of nowhere. And so in the evening, my partner goes to sleep with the baby. I'm there with them until they both fall asleep, and then I go downstairs and I just have some time to myself where I'll do a combination of things. Sometimes I'll just do nothing and scroll on TikTok. Sometimes I'll try and be creative. I'll write some notes of something I want to achieve. Sometimes I'll write a little bit on the computer, just some creative writing. And others, I just sit there don't do anything. And I said this to my cousin. I was like, I've caught myself a couple of times where I'm sat on the sofa with my other half, we're just watching a program, and before I know it, I'll she'll be saying my name, trying to get my attention, and I'll realise that for the last half an hour I've just been staring at a wall. I haven't even been watching what's going on, because my brain has just been spiraling about things, and it's just paralysed me in the spot, and I'm just staring at a wall for half an hour. And then she says, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I can't have that conversation. I find it very difficult, and that's probably a flaw of mine, to have the conversation where I turn to her and I go, actually, I've been sat here for the last half an hour absolutely paralysed with anxiety and fear that I've let you down, that I haven't provided for our family, that we might experience problems in the near future that are my fault, and I'm desperately trying to create a solution in my brain, and I'm struggling. I haven't had that conversation with her, and that's my fault. Absolutely not hers. There's nothing against her in terms of sort of her approachability or what I can talk to her about. None of that. She's lovely. It's just my issue. And just to go to a slightly wider audience, is I feel men in this situation get like that. Women are far better at communicating. So if it was the other way around, like if I was a woman, I imagine, again, this is just my opinion, but I imagine I would probably have sort of had the girls round, chatted it all out, got all their support. No, you're not a failure. No, you're doing your best. You just got to do this. It's just a short-term thing. You'll land on your feet, blah, 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 blah. And just be flooded with support. And I gave my example on the first podcast of what one of my guy mates said to me when I told him about this. And it was just brutal. Absolutely brutal. And it's the way guys approach it, very much like, well, everything was your fault, you need to man up, you need to dig deep, you just got to put the effort in, you just got to do it. No real support as such, but they are supportive words in a way. You just have to look at them. But big difference between the two, in my opinion. I could be completely wrong here, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just thought dumping. So yeah, that was like the fear of it all. But so for me, having this little thing to focus on in the morning, when I get home, I feel like I've accomplished something. I feel like I've done something that's a little bit for me. It's helped me because I've managed to talk about some stuff that in some ways I feel like I can't talk about. I guess it's like a fear of being viewed as weak, inadequate. I don't know. That would be where my thought was going, but I don't know. It could just be that I'm a rubbish communicator. Who knows? But yeah, so that fear, we talked about it for a while, and he was saying, he's going through some stuff at the moment. They're trying to get out of it. He's doing XYZ to work towards a strategy and a way out. And then we got talking about, if we were ever to collab again and do something, and we are thinking January of looking at doing something together again, which would be really cool. So the fear, the other fear, just because I've been talking about fear, this other thing's just popped into my head. Now, I have spoken to other people about this. It took me a while to ask other people if this has happened to them, and I got met with a resounding no, never happened to me. You need to go talk to someone because this isn't normal. I was like, okay, fine. I open up and you tell me I'm mental, fine, okay. And it is related to fear, but I think all of this fear type stuff can be connected. But so let me tell you. So I have this thing where I can be spending time with my daughter, holding her, walking up and down the stairs, whatever, and at any random moment, right, now this bit I think applies to a lot of parents, is that a random thought will come into my head of like the worst possible thing that could happen in that situation. Like, you're walking down the stairs, you trip, you fall, you tumble, crap. So you consciously like, right, let's carefully walk down the stairs, all that stuff, right? That, I think, I would say almost all parents occasionally will have happen to them. But what happens with me is that in that moment, and the only way I can describe it is I feel like someone has implanted a memory into my brain of that worst case scenario happening and playing out, and it all happens in a split second. But I vividly have a mental video play in my head. It's like football when someone scores a goal. Like, gameplay kind of pauses for a bit and you see the replay and then gameplay continues. So it's almost like my life gets paused, I watch this clip, and then life continues and hits play. And in this clip, I mentally visualize the bad thing happening, and I mean the worst thing happening at that time, horrific, and then everything that follows, going to the hospital, what happens, like how it made me feel, the fear of doing the same activity again, the judgment from others, everything, and it plays out, and it can happen at any moment. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to relate this to the original point of fear, but it's talking about fear. So if you continue watching these, you'll realise I just go on tangents and have a big word vomit. But yeah, so that happens, and I get this mental, like, it's almost like a memory. And if you ask me what they are, I can tell you pretty much every single one, exactly what that memory was, and the entire detail of it all happening. And I think that fear is almost related, because it's like when you're in a job, there, with everyone, there is always a fear of the worst case situation happening, aka getting fired, right? But depending on sort of like how long you've worked there, how good you are at the job, that fear becomes like a smaller and smaller percentage chance of happening, and you think about it less and less, and then eventually you're like just plain sailing, right? Whereas this fear, like, it can happen all the time, and it might happen several times a week for me, okay? But because I think that is an outcome that is so horrific, I can't, no matter how good a dad I am, or how confident I am in protecting her from harm, I can't get that percentage likelihood of it happening for my brain to reduce it so that the fear goes away, or I learn to live with the fear of whatever. And so yes, I managed to link them. Okay, cool. But yeah, so that happens. That's my fear. So when people have previously talked to me about fear of getting into a situation like I am now, or they're trying to talk to me about what I'm going through, like if the roles were reversed, the sort of advice I have is that you can't always stop your brain from overthinking. Not all the time. Sometimes you can catch yourself and go, whoop, no, move on. But other times you get the full brain spiral, and it's what you do with it, I think, is the main thing. So if you look at my current situation, the fear, if I do the right things, if I dedicate my time, energy, and direct it in a certain way, then it's going to help me through it, i.e. things like this, talking. And I said this to my cousin as well. I said, look, I'm always here, ring me, talk to me whenever you want, but because him and his partner, they have a little online business, sort of part-time, but they're selling products and they're doing social media and stuff like that. And I'm like, obviously you might not, you're trying to sell a product, you don't want to get on camera and talk out all of your fears and everything, but you can use kind of that fear of the situation you're in to push yourself to make some extra video content for the social media platforms and stuff like that. And I think you have to just take positive steps and wins where you can. And sometimes people just can't see where there's a win. There's a win everywhere. If a lot of people say one of the first things you should do in the morning is make your bed, because straight away you've got out of bed and boom, you've accomplished something within like the first 20 seconds of being out of bed, and it's a good habit to get into. So it's those sort of things that can be helpful, because you're not a failure. No one is a failure. Okay, you might have failed an attempt, but you're not a failure, and not succeeding in something is a huge opportunity for growth. And you have to think of it like that. You have to understand that there is a lot of learning you can do from not succeeding an attempt, and use how that made you feel, use what you've learned of what not to do next time, in order to drive towards the successful attempt, so to speak. Okay, and then to sort of, I'm getting towards the end of my runtime, I think. So just to kind of bring this full circle, we have been chatting about the little angel on the shoulder, the 5 days things, changing an icon into an icon and having that champion on your shoulders. And I think my takeaway for the I can is, I'm going to try and relate it to the title that I've given this podcast at the moment, is you're only breakable if you let yourself be breakable. But being breakable isn't a bad thing. So the title of the podcast is Unbreakable, and it's not necessarily going down the route that you shouldn't let anything affect you, you shouldn't let anything break you. not at all. I think the approach of being unbreakable is knowing that you can be broken, but learn from it, better yourself, so that the negative becomes a positive, and because the negative becomes a positive, you become unbreakable. Because anything that can break you, you turn around to be a positive thing, and then you're unbreakable. That's kind of the philosophy behind the name. So the I can't into an I can. I think my I can't for the day is that I can't live in fear. And I know that sounds weird because we're trying to change an I can't to an I can, so that will be I can live in fear. No, I can't be afraid. Okay, I need to learn that being afraid is good, and how I direct it is what is good. So my little angel on the shoulder, if I start getting a bit of anxiety, if I start thinking a certain way, my little angel has to go, yeah, you're feeling that way, let's bloody use it. What are you gonna do? Right, you're feeling this way about that, right, get upstairs, let's write a page, let's create a top 10 list. Be creative, do something every time you feel that way. So the fear of failure, let's go with that. Okay, yes, I can be a failure because I can learn from it and I can better myself. So anyway, right, I am going to end today's episode here. So have a lovely day, a magically amazing, fantastical day, and I will see you guys soon.